Hello, dear students. As your examinations are now coming to an end, so also the videos that I have been sharing on penology, victimology, and legislative drafting for those of you who wanted these lectures to be in English, and this is the final video in that series. I am Dr. Vibha Sharma, Associate Professor in Government Law College, Ajmer. As you can see, today I'll be sharing some aspects of subordinate legislation about which you already have read in administrative law. But here we would be seeing those aspects of subordinate legislation under the subject of legislative drafting, which are important, though we may be already aware of all of them, but we will just go through them once again. So let's start knowing about it. We are already aware that there are two types of legislation: supreme legislation and subordinate legislation. Legislation is said to be supreme or direct when the authority under which the law is enacted is a sovereign lawmaking body. For example, the Indian Parliament or the legislature of any state. On the other hand, legislation is said to be subordinate or indirect when the authority is a subordinate lawmaking body which derives its power from the sovereign authority. Here, the example can be the laws and regulations made by the municipality. So now, when we see the supreme legislation, we find that these are the chief of them: public bills, private bills, constitutional amendment bills, and codes and codification of laws. So a public bill relates to matters of public policy, which is introduced by the government for general application over the whole country and over all classes of people. In India, public bills are also known as government bills. Then private bills are those which are introduced by private members of any legislative assembly or parliament on any subject included in the schedule of the constitution, which is within the competence of the respective legislature. Then we come to constitutional amendment bills. Now they are very important part of legislation in present day lawmaking in every country. The Constitution of India itself contains provisions for introduction of amendment bill in either house of parliament. However, it is to be noted that the Supreme Court invariably holds that any amendment of the fundamental rights in Part 3 of the Constitution by an act of parliament must not offend the basic feature of the Constitution. Then we come to codes and codification of laws. So the code of law actually means the collecting of laws which are brought together systematically and are harmonious on a particular matter. Now, though we have the examples from earlier times, say such as of Code of Hammurabi or the Code of Manu, in the modern days we find the Indian Penal Code, which actually is a good example of the codes and codification of laws by the supreme legislation or legislature. Then we come to subordinate legislation. Here we find that these are generally categorized in these 5 categories: autonomous, executive, judicial, municipal or local laws, and colonial. Simply put, subordinate legislation is a legislation by any authority other than the supreme authority in the state. In other words, it may be said that laws made under the powers delegated to it by the supreme authority to a subordinate authority is subordinate legislation. Correct? So please remember that the subordinate legislation gets its validity and continuance from the supreme authority. So as we have already seen that they can be put under these categories, we'll just take them up one by one. Autonomous is the legislation which is actually enacted by the autonomous bodies, such as a university. Now, they make bylaws for the regulations of its administration and implementation of their objectives as set out in the statutes under which those bodies are created. So, in such cases, the sovereign authority may confer rule-making powers to private entities. That is a group of private individuals on matters entrusted to them as a group. Then we come to executive. Legislation by the executive. It is actually when the executive power of the state is combined with the subordinate legislative powers which are expressly delegated to it by the legislature for smooth running of the administration of the government. So such power is required to be delegated to the concerned government department because it is expected and thought that they are expert and competent to make detailed regulations for the implementation of the parent law. Okay. Then we come to the legislation which is made by the judiciary. In India, the Supreme Court and the High Courts are empowered to make their own rules and procedures, and they also are to control the subordinate judiciary. So they can enact those rules. The rules and procedures made by the courts may be said in a sense as judicial legislation. For example, Supreme Court rules of 1966. Then we see the municipal or local laws. So the local bodies in various states are also empowered with limited subordinate lawmaking powers concerning their local matters, which will operate within its respective locality. For example, municipal corporations, municipal board, Zilla Parishads, Medical Council of India, etc., etc. And the legislation which is enacted by the colonies are put under this heading, that is colonial. So the countries which are actually not independent and are under the control of some other country. Now, when they are interested with some legislative power, then the legislations enacted by them are categorized as subordinate legislation and put under the heading of colonial legislation. So I hope that these particular aspects are really clear to all of you now. Now coming to the various forms of subordinate legislation, we will just go through these expressions which we already are aware of, but simply to have more clarity relating to these expressions, we will just quickly go through as to what they mean and when are these terms used. Rules, regulations, orders, notifications, bylaws, scheme. So the expression rule is defined in the General Clauses Act of 1897 as a rule made in exercise of a power conferred by any enactment and will include a regulation made as a rule under any enactment. So the most common form of delegation of legislative power is to authorize the executive to frame rules for carrying into effect the objects and purposes of the act. You very well are aware of this instance, especially under the labor laws. Then regulation. So they are generally made by a subordinate authority like a board or other statutory body functioning under a statute. So the draftsmen are generally advised to preserve a distinction between the rules and regulations if that is the intention of the legislature. The Indian practice is, however, to confer rule-making powers on the government itself, and where a specified subordinate authority is singled out for regulating any matter, subsidiary legislation is generally in the form of regulations. Now, we must also note that regulation and rules are at times used interchangeably as well. So when power to make delegated legislation is conferred on different authorities by the same act, The words rules and regulations may be utilized to distinguish the source and to subordinate the latter to former. However, sometimes the same authority may be authorized to make rules in respect of certain matters and regulation in respect of others. Now we see orders. So while a rule is general in character and indiscriminate in its application, an order, broadly speaking, is specific and may be limited in its application, say as under the Essential Commodities Act or Defense of India Act. So they might be general as well as particular. Then we come to notification. So to notify means to make something known. And in the case of public matters, it generally means that some persons whose duty it is to notify something gives it in the manner prescribed and to the persons entitled to receive it. Quite often, the relevant statutes may define notification to mean notification in the official gazette. Correct? Then we come to bylaws. The expression bylaw is generally used when a body like the municipal corporation is authorized to deal with specified matters. A bylaw is an ordinance affecting the public or some members of the public. And then schemes. So scheme may be of two kinds. It may embody subordinate legislation containing a body of rules which are binding on person with whom the rules are concerned. And in such a case, if passed by an authority having the necessary power to do so, it will be enforceable in courts of law or by other authorities and will have the force of law. However, the other kind of scheme may be purely executive in character and does not contain any rules of conduct for anybody to follow. Okay. Now coming to the constitutional mandate. We are aware that in every country, the subordinate legislation has actually assumed great importance in view of the enormous volume of delegated legislation, which is framed by the executive government and other statutory and non-statutory bodies. So almost all the activities of the individual citizen and the society as well are controlled by the subordinate legislation. Of course, we are very much aware of it. So the modern constitutional documents have given equal importance to the subordinate or delegated legislation and has made sufficient mandatory provisions to control it so that the subordinate legislation does not transgress the rights of the citizens of the nation. Under the Indian Constitution, we are aware that Article 13 talks about law, and under Article 13(3) Clause A, it is provided that law includes any ordinance, order, bylaw, rule, regulation, notification, custom or usage having in the territory of India the force of law. Every rule, regulation, order, bylaw or scheme framed under an act of parliament must be intra vires the provisions of the act under which it has been framed, and also it has to be consistent with the provisions of the Constitution. We are very clear about it, correct? And therefore, the drafter has to take utmost care to see that the subordinate legislation framed by him is not inconsistent with any of the provisions of the Constitution. He should take all precautions while framing the subordinate legislation and avoid such inconsistencies. Now coming to the diverse purposes for which the power to legislate can be delegated. So as you can see that there are many purposes, but of course the list is not exhaustive. There may be more purposes also. Starting with commencement of acts, several acts authorize the government to appoint the date with effect from which the enactment shall come into force. As Sir Cecil Carr has observed that by this method, the legislature provides the target but leaves to the executive the task of pressing the trigger. Now, all of this is actually possible because of Section 22 of the General Clauses Act of 1897, whereunder the rules may be made orders may be issued for enforcement of an act, for appointment of officers, or for prescribing the procedural matters before the commencement of the act. I hope you are aware of the General Clauses Act of 1987, which is very much in existence and applicable in India. Now, then, for extension and application of acts, so the subordinate legislation device is often used for the extension of acts in respect of territory and other objects and also of duration of time. Then we come to temporary extension of acts. So act of temporary nature having a fixed tenure sometimes contains a provision enabling the government to extend the life of the act or part of it. Correct? Then the extension of acts to objects not originally covered can all the power to do it can also be delegated to the executive. Then dispensing and suspending of acts. Many acts actually provide an exemption clause empowering the executive to make the exemptions from all or any of the provisions of an act in a particular case or class of cases when, in the discretion of the executive, such a course is warranted. I hope you are aware of many such provisions, especially under the labor laws again. Then, delegation of power to alter an act. Now, alteration technically amounts to an amendment of an act. Now, it may be by way of modification or amendment. Modification empower the government to make changes in any act by way of adoption, alteration, exception, restriction, or additions so that the modified acts serves some purpose other than that for which it was originally enacted. Then we see that delegation of legislative power to impose taxes is also there. So to understand this form of delegation, we should be aware of the distinction between taxes and fees. I hope you all are aware already of the differences. So generally it is whenever the imposition of fee is involved, then at that time, that is the power which is given to the executive to determine the rates or amount of fees and to vary them at its discretion. Right? Then we come to the delegation of power of supplementary legislation. Now, under this heading, all that may be included where the authorization has been given to the executive to make the rule, to elaborate, supplement, or help to work out the details of the principles laid out in the Act. The bulk of the subordinate legislation falls under this category, which regulates the wide range of private activities. And then, of course, we find that the delegated legislation is actually being used for the purpose of power to prescribe punishments. In India, it is a common practice to delegate the power to prescribe in the rules the punishments for their breach. Now, this power is delegated even under those statutes which provide for framing of rules for setting off only administrative machinery. This power is also delegated to the statutory bodies and corporations, of course, with certain safeguards very much in place. Okay, so these many are the purposes for which generally the delegated legislation is being used. The list is not exhaustive to say it again. Now coming to the general aspects of delegated legislation. So we already are aware regarding the extent of delegation. We know that legislature cannot delegate its essential legislative function, and the Supreme Court of India time and again in very many cases have said very clearly, categorically, that the power which has been delegated cannot be uncanalized and uncontrolled. Correct? There has to be a guidance to the executive and other proper safeguards are to be provided to them. That is to say, that what guidance should be given to the delegatee in a given case will of course depend upon a consideration of the provisions of law made in that behalf. Then the nature of the body to which the power is delegated may be a factor for consideration. Then, of course, power to remove difficulties of an act is also very much there, which we generally find. Then we are aware that the delegated legislation is, of course, subject to the judicial review. And the grounds on which this judicial review can take place is violation of the provision of the Constitution, violation of the enabling act, the parent act, so to say, under which the delegated legislation has been enacted. Then the non-compliance with the natural justice, principles of natural justice, if they are not followed by the delegated legislation, then the judicial review can happen and it can be declared null and void. Then a retrospectivity of delegated legislation, if it is not clearly provided by the enabling act, then generally speaking, the delegated legislation cannot have a retrospective effect. And of course, in case the rules or the delegated legislation contain the provisions curtailing judicial review, then of course it is a matter for the courts to look into those delegated legislation enactments. Correct? Then, of course, there are certain provisions contained in the General Clauses Act of 1897 itself relating to the subordinate or delegated legislation, like Section 22 of the General Clauses Act, which provides that the power conferred by the Enabling Act to make subordinate legislation may at times be exercised even before the commencement of the Act. But then it is to be noted that Section 22 of the General Clauses Act is an enabling provision, its intent and purpose being to facilitate the making of rules, bylaws, and orders made before the commencement of the Act is to take place after the passing of the Act and as preparatory to the Act when it comes into force. Then we see Section 23 of the General Clauses Act, which actually provides for previous publication of the rules. That is, before they are brought into effect, they have to be published. However, there is no uniform procedure in India for making subordinate legislation, and also there is no uniformity as far as the provision contained in Section 23 of the General Clauses Act is concerned. Then it is to be noted that rules under an act are no doubt prepared by the department concerned with the administration of the act, but they are submitted for examination by the legislative section of the Ministry of Law. Then the Ministry of Law is the one who is concerned to see that the rules proposed to be made are correctly drawn and are within the limits of the power conferred. Okay. Now coming to the final aspect of subordinate legislation, and that is committees on subordinate legislation. We are aware that due to complexity of legislation and for want of sufficient time, parliaments generally delegate the powers of framing subordinate legislation to the executive government and authorities subordinate to it. However, they actually exercise strict control over the framing of rules, orders, etc. Each house of Indian Parliament, that is Lok Sabha, House of People, and the Rajya Sabha, that is Council of States, have established committees on subordinate legislation whose main function is to scrutinize the delegated legislation which is placed on the table of Parliament. The state legislatures have also established similar committees to control and scrutinize the delegated legislation framed under the relevant state acts. So, of course, there are the rules of procedure and conduct of business of Lok Sabha as well as the Rajya Sabha, and it provides for the various functions which are discharged by these committees. Some of them are, let's just take a look at that, and they are whether the rules are in accordance with the general object of the Constitution or the act pursuant to which it is made, whether the rule contains matter which should be dealt within an act, whether the rules contain imposition of any tax, whether the rules directly or indirectly bars the jurisdiction of the courts, whether the rules give retrospective effect to any of the provisions not expressly provided in the Act, whether it appears to make some unusual or unexpected use of the powers conferred by the Constitution or the Act, and whether there appears to have been unjustifiable delay in its publication or in laying it before the Parliament, etc., etc. So, with this, we come to an end on the aspect of subordinate legislation, and that too particularly the Committee on Legislation. And with this, we also come to an end to all the lecture series that I have been sharing with all of you through these videos of mine. I really hope that they have been useful to at least some of you. The aspect that I have shared with all of you under the legislative drafting as well as penology and victimology. All the very best for the remaining exams of yours, and do well. Do very nicely in your exams. Please take very good care of yourselves, and all the best for the exams, the remaining ones. And of course, God bless all of you. Thank you so much for listening. Bye.